film with a weird sex offending character. I've watched much worse films by French directors made recently than this. There was just something about knowing what I knew. I could not watch the heavily implied rape scene in Marnie, and then this is from Evan Hunter's Me and Hitch. The film where Tippi Hedren's character is raped by her husband. Screenwriter Evan Hunter wanted to lose the scenes he thought would cause the audience to lose the sympathy with the male lead, played by Sean Connery. But Hitchcock was adamant it should remain. That's bad enough, but he told Evan, when he sticks it in her, I want the camera right on her face. Now, I'm sorry, that is someone. It's not exploring the dark parts of his psyche for art. That's someone just getting off on something he doesn't have the courage to do, probably would if he thought he'd get away with it.
Yeah, okay. I mean, the counter argument to that is, look at the motivations for cutting it from the film is because it would lose sympathy with the male lead. But Hitchcock wanted to show that. He wanted to show that happens, that husbands do rape their wives, that it's awful. Is there something in that?
I mean,
rather than pretending that these things don't happen.
Heidi Regan, what about this one? And then, if this doesn't put the nail in the coffin,
okay, the networks are down, the equipment is ready, and we've crippled their supply.
I always believe in following the advice of the playwright Sargent, said Hitchcock at the time. He said, and I quote, torture the women. The trouble today is that we don't torture women enough. I mean, I would advise getting on a plane, Alfred, and having a poke around the world. I mean, is he just doing that because he was a showman and wanted to create a sensational effect for the audience he was marketing to, Heidi, or is he just a total bastard gitwanker?
I mean, yeah, I'm very much erring on total bastard gitwanker. Yeah, I can't...
Is that the new title for the podcast?
Yeah.
My autobiography.
It's already in use.
Again, like Tom was saying, I'm sure you could argue the other way and say that's just him saying we need to show the horrors that are out there, and that's the best way to do that is if you torture the woman, people feel it more, or something like that. But going with all the other evidence, it sounds like he definitely wanted to torture the women for other reasons besides giving empathy to women, I would say. But yeah.
I left out this really amazing detail. I don't even know this one, Heidi. We should say it was Tippi Hedren in Marnie. His obsession worsened, and he had her face made into like a cast mask, even though it was not at all necessary for the film, and it stayed in his private quarters. Now, I don't want to hypothesise what happened to that mask, but I've got a bloody good idea.
Can I just say in his defence, I did do that with my landlord at university. just sticking it to the man.
Is the one you poisoned? the one who died of dysentery in hospital, that one.
Can we do an episode where we just judge was Tom Parry an asshole?
Listen, we are out of time. Before we go to the vote, I have to remind you of envelope number 1, of the amazing, groundbreaking, amazing work this guy did. A guy so confident he refused a CBE because it did not do justice to his contribution to British culture, and then he got the knighthood. A man who, when Paul Newman asked, "What's my character's motivation?" Hitchcock replied, "Your salary." I mean, that alone is I'm going to fucking use that one. I wish so few people had used that on me in my time. It would have shut me up. So there was a lot about this man that speaks to the genius of his filmmaking talent. Nonetheless, I'm afraid, panel, this is time to move to what people normally... It's my Hitchcock-type prank, where I force you to be reductive to the point of a 5-year-old. Nonetheless, if you're on social media, that could be your fate one day. Evil or genius? Now, I am going to come to... It's hard here, because I'm going to find it difficult. You're all quite playful characters and have surprised me. Do you know what? I'm going to go to Heidi first. I feel Professor Regan should comment first.
It feels it's just a full-on creep. I do appreciate what he achieved in cinema. I think at the time, maybe the way he spoke was also, I think, playing up to stuff for the interviews, playing up to describing women in that way. But if you look at the actions of what he did to Tippi and sending dolls and all that, it feels, I'm going to go on a limb, so that feels quite evil to me.
Normally we're having to use it slightly figuratively this level. I feel it's okay, so that's 1 for evil. Do not feel pressure to follow suit. I'm going to leave the Bowmeister General with the, will it be a casting vote or will it be a ceiling vote? Because I'm coming to thrust and parry himself next.
I mean, it's worth saying that Hitchcock would absolutely love that this conversation's going.
Marcel.
The idea that we're sat here debating whether he's completely evil or whether he's a genius, he would absolutely, I think, be comfortable with agreeing with both. And I'm not sure if you have many cases on this podcast where you can comfortably say he is an evil genius, and you know, he is. He's back almost everyone. Yeah, I mean, you have to be for me. I know that's it, because you know he clearly has this kind of masochistic tendencies. He's clearly a terrible egomaniac who wields his power unconscionably, as you know, people who are afforded too much authority can often do, and there's no excusing his behaviour. He is clearly a genius, though, you know, and that is something you have to admit. I think no matter what you think of his actions, what he created is genius.
So what I always say to panellists when they find themselves in your position is, see before you two scales. It doesn't matter which side has even half a gram more of weight on the other. Do not feel like you can't go with how you see those scales, because as you look at them now, it tips in one direction, and that is either evil or genius. And I must ask you for your vote.
Genius.
Oh, it's 1-1, my favourite. That means Catherine, the Bohart of Bohart Manor. You have the casting vote. Alfred Hitchcock, evil or genius?
It's tricky, right? Because obviously an Irish woman giving out about a night, like, okay, we get it, you're bored, it's boring. But no, look, I think there's no discrediting the weight and impact of his work. For me, it comes back to the same problem, which is that for so long, male genius, specifically and especially in the arts, has permitted a specific type of evil, and it's one usually of sexual possession and abuse towards women, which we all are just okay with, right? Because it's just so creative, and I just am so tired of being like, but great film, boys. So, no, I think that people can learn camera skills, but I'm not sure that ethics aren't just ingrained. And to that end, I'm gonna have to go with, and I do say this to be fair, as not much of a horror fan anyway, with no rape, please, evil.
What a line to finish on, and thank you very much. So that's the vote. Alfred Hitchcock, by 2 votes to 1, is evil. That was intellectual adrenaline. I hope everyone listening to it was absolutely as engrossed as I was. Bloody fantastic work. Thank you so much to my panel, Heidi Regan, Catherine Bohart, Tom Parry. We all used to be comedians. And we're not anymore. So thank you for listening to us pretend we're experts in other fields. If you really like this episode, maybe you stumbled on it by accident, please head to BBC Sounds. You can find heroes in past episodes, have those ruined too. You can find monsters or people you'd want to dislike. Hit subscribe, like, and hang out on BBC Sounds. It's really important at the moment to get some good earworm stuff to listen to. I've been Russell Kane. Thank you very much. This has been Evil Genius. Goodbye.
Hello, did you know that in 1 million years there'll be no more total solar eclipses because the moon is gradually moving away from the Earth? Or that during China's Cultural Revolution,
Merryweather Security with another classic private militia cover play. They have what we're after.
Are 2 of the extraordinary things I've learned while presenting the latest series in our time. Each week, I ask 3 expert academic guests to break down and illuminate everything from quantum gravity to the nature of humanity, from Confucius to Augustus, from Beowulf to Boudicca. So if you're curious about the world around you, or you simply want to win your next general knowledge quiz, subscribe to In Our Time with BBC Sounds.
Få masser af spænding i din hverdag med de bedste true crimes og små filmbog. Lyt blandt andet eksklusivt til Brian Sandbergs nye bog.
Mit navn er Brian Sandberg. Min nye bog, Sandbergs Paradis, er min fortælling om, hvad der skete på en tur til Tenerife i 1999.
Lyt til Sandbergs Paradis og
This is the BBC.
This podcast is supported by advertising outside the UK.
In 2012, a new charity bursts onto the scene. It's called the Imagine, and it grants wishes to seriously ill children. It has the support of the biggest boy band in the world, One Direction. It's run by an inspirational 16-year-old girl called Megan Barry, who herself is battling a brain tumor.
I've been in and out of hospital and seen so many other very poorly children.
But when questions arise about her story, they reveal she could be facing another very different danger, or at least this girl going through.
It wasn't supposed to end like that.
Listen to Believe Imagine with me, Jake Bartlett.
BBC Sounds, music, radio, podcasts.
Warning, this episode contains strong language. Genius. Hello and welcome to BBC Radio 4's Evil Genius. I'm Russell Kane, wait, with your host Russell Kane, Evil Genius chaired by, hosted, but wait. No, let's go with the most adaptive, simple solution. Evil Genius with me, Russell Kane. No, sorry, I was just naturally selecting the best syntax by a process of elimination. Not here all week, it's 1 hour. Evil Genius is the show where we lift up scoundrels and squish down luminaries. Only enter if you wish to be confused and disappointed. I actually had that on my bedroom door when I was in my 20s. Past episodes showed Mother Teresa to be one bad mother, just a bad mother, George Best to be, and Pablo Escobar to be a lovely humanitarian and entrepreneur. Plenty Pablo. The idea of Evil Genius is straightforward enough. I unveil deliciously surprising facts about dead famous humans. Then my panel of funny people wrangle in discomfort as they are forced to vote that human evil or genius. Using the word human is problematic for today's subject, who by his own definition is just an ever-changing, minutely evolving ape, who was, even on the tiniest scale, gradations removed from our own species, the constant force of evolution. Anybody that was talking bollocks, know what I mean? No, seriously, I love you, God. Stay with me, God, because we're going to be evaluating our current God, Dawkins, Darwin, and his theory of evolution. How did we all come to be on the planet? No biggie, unlike Argentinosaurus huinculensis, the largest dinosaur ever. Paleontology for you there. And now for a bit of... This is almost Partridgian. And now for a bit of... And now for a bit of panel ontology as I introduce today's guests. Oh my God, Steve Pedersen, thank you for writing. We actually drafted in Steve Cooper's writing. I'm joined today by Jade Adams. You joined us for Darth Vader and Tupac Shakur Evil Geniuses. I wonder if we can guess which way they both went. Check out Jade's Amazon Prime special, Serious Black Jumper, which she is not wearing today, although she is sporting a fantastic beret. Is it a beret?
No, it's just a little, just a little beanie, and I got a white T-shirt on. I look like I'm about to drop a hip hop album.
That's it. Dance rehearsal. Come on, guys. One more run through.
That Tupac episode really rubbed off on you, didn't it? It really did.
It's going to be sharp in about 20 minutes.
We all knew. Totally. Angela Barnes, one of my favourite comedians, who I nicknamed the Vauxhall Calibra, as she cracks us into 6th gear every kick we do. Have a listen to her podcast, We Are History, with John O'Farrell. Fantastic. And Neil Delamere, he was there for Evil Genius Lou Reed, live at Edinburgh, when the fireworks went off at exactly the right time. Do you remember that? When he pronounced Judgment. He's on Twitter at Neil Delamere and Instagram at Neil Delamere Comedy if he manages to kill God during this episode. Irish fans, that's where you can find him. So, gang, how did you think we came to be here? What is life? And it's still my favourite radio career moment of everything I've ever done when I said to Alan de Bottom, Alan, how are you? And he went, good question, how am I? That's honestly fantastic. Well, Angela Barnes, what is life? How are we here? What's Barnes' meaning of life?
Well, it's something to do with a stalk, isn't it? A stalk, and when mummy and daddy love each other very much.
It's kind of accurate now because apparently no one's having sex anymore. So yes, a stalk comes down, and the
Well,
reason
you cover each other in margarine.
Yeah.
Neil, how did we get here? What is life?
Well, we got here through the process of evolution. I'm a massive fan. You're going to have to really come up with some mental facts for me to not like Charles Darwin. I did a project on him when I was in school. We learned about him in secondary school. Comparative embryology, comparative anatomy, and paleontology.
We were at very different schools, because when I did a project on Charles Darwin at school, I just had to colour in his beard.
I got detention in a class where Darwin came up, and I went to a C of E school, and they started talking about Darwin and the process of evolution, and I was like, hang on a minute, I've just come from RE, and they were telling me something different. What the hell's going on? I got detention for it. So, pretty reckless and a bit of a renegade, really, quite a young age.
I feel like you're reading out your scripts and Neil's reading yours. You went to a Catholic school where you weren't allowed to talk about Darwin.
I'm pretty sure Neil didn't go to a C of E school.
Yeah, I was very tired. The commute to a Church of England school from my home in the middle of Ireland. I mean...
Right, well there we are. What a mixture of opinions. So I'm going to give you the biography of Darwin as briefly as I can. It's not easy. It's an amazing life. He was born in 1809, one of 5 children. His father was a wealthy doctor. His mother died when he was 8. Darwin's grandfathers were both famous men. Erasmus Darwin, a noted polymath, not a porn star, which is what it sounds like. And Josiah Wedgwood, who founded the highly successful Wedgwood Pottery Company in Camden. From boyhood, Darwin was fascinated by the natural world, identifying plants and collecting shells and minerals. Did you collect anything as kids? Any nature buffs here?
I'm from the sea. I know I don't sound it, but I'm from the sea. There was a park. I once ate chewing gum off the pavement. I mean, there you are. That's about as natural as I got.
I did actually once, I had a really weird hippie teacher at school, and we used to do environmental studies, and it's a primary school, and he took us on a school trip once, and I found a dead vole, and I said, oh look at it, and he told me to take it home and bury it in my garden, because by the summer I would, quote, have a nice set of bones.
And that's how the nickname Owl Barnes was born. Or Barnes Owl, surely Barnes Owl.
That would have been so great, Neil, if I hadn't said vole. It was a vole.
yeah, but that's what they collect. Owls eat balls.
I think what Neil was implied, you took it home and then sicked up the pelt shortly afterwards. How's that ball going, Andy? I don't think we've answered even up,
I do like the idea, by the way, that he's married into the Wedgwood family, because he married his first cousin and his mother was a Wedgwood as well. If you marry a Wedgwood, you hope it's a Greek-style wedding, surely. Surely.
Everything's too valuable.
Is it marrying your cousin or having children with your cousin opposite of evolution?
Yes, and that's, in fact, when it dawned on me, when it's experimenting with pigeons, that although you shift mutation forward by breeding cousin pigeons, it does carry the risk of unfavourable mutations, and on some level, he may have blamed himself for the death of some of his children for having a cousin eaten.
Keep it light, mate.
If you ask a question, I will answer it.
So hang on, let me get where he came from. He comes from a family of successful people, yeah?
Incredibly intellectually elite.
It's a bad sign for me. It's a bad sign, but carry on.
Exactly. But this will get you back on side, Jade. He did not do well at school.
Great, I love him.
He writes himself that he was considered rather below the common standard of intellect when he once ate chewing gum from a paper. He said, to my deep mortification, my father once said to me, you care nothing but for shooting, dogs and rat catching, and you will disgrace yourself and all your family. He was sent to Cambridge, he was sent in those days to Cambridge to study, where he became interested in science and then went on the famous voyage of the Beagle to South America in 1831 as a naturalist. He was 22 and what
he didn't have any clothes on?
Yes. I left the gap so I knew someone was going to put Darwin's knob out on that boat. In fact, in my script it says, allow gap for Angela to pull Darwin's knob out on the Beagle.
You have Angela Bingo, and the first one was Vole, and the second one was Knob.
1982, what he saw there changed his life and led him to come up with his theory. And here's where we go to the first of our envelopes. Now, anyone who's not listened to Evil Genius before would not know. But the way we drive things forward, by the way we try to surprise Neil Delamere to take start on and make uncomfortable the panel, is to give them facts that they may or may not wish were true when they open their envelope. And someone has envelope number 1.
That'll be me. It says,
Cargo delivered.
Willison wrote about Darwin's book, The Origin of Species. No single document in history has so profoundly affected humankind's understanding of the living world. To which I say, she hasn't read The Hungry Caterpillar.
Oh, exactly. So, ironically, is evolution in action.
Exactly.
He was a revolutionary scientist whose discoveries are a lasting foundation of modern science. In fact, he's up there with Einstein. There are more parallels with Einstein, which we might look at later.
White guy? No, that's not it. Sorry.
We've already done Einstein. Go back and catch up on that episode if you want to know what happened. I mean, it's pretty indisputable, this claim. I've tried flinging a bit of mud at it, but it's pretty amazing what he did. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's what he did was amazing. He also wasn't a naturalist on that ship at the start. He was bizarrely hired to be the companion to the captain.
That's right.
He wasn't a naturalist at the start.
No,
Well, for that, he did have to take his kit.
Exactly. Yeah. Text Cutlass to 1-800-FLIRTY. It does sound horrendous. But the captain was terrified of that he was going to kill himself because previous people had done that and got really lonely, and he brought someone posh that he could talk to because he wasn't going to talk to the crew. So he wasn't a naturalist at the start. He just kind of got to that point. What is remarkable, I didn't realise this until I saw a program about this. He did all this 20 years. He published Origin of the Species 20 years after he was on the beat because he was terrified. He knew how powerful the theory was, and he knew what he was going against. But he kept
And also,
quiet
he
for
was
20
a
years.
religious man as well, right? So he wasn't that keen on the theory himself at first, was he?
With his wife, but I think his faith slipped away quite steadily and then sped up and vanished altogether. Could we be looking instead, Angela, at a case of cowardice rather than caution? Neil's, he's just so scared, he knew the power of his theory. Meanwhile, Alfred Russel Wallace had no problem, just banged it all out in a very concise 10-page letter, the same theory before Darwin had published, but after Darwin had come up with the idea, but still.
Alfred Russel Wallace, the Andrew Ridgeley of...
Yeah, very much, yeah. Darwin founded a new life science, evolutionary biology. His discoveries changed our view of the natural world and man's place in it. As one biologist put it, he took God out of science and made scientific explanations for all natural phenomena possible. It was not only a scientific revolution, but a spiritual and intellectual one too.
Well, I mean, we all want to write around our views, don't we?
Is anyone else feeling super inadequate at the moment? You know,
No.
we changed science, and I'm just like, well, I crocheted a rug yesterday.
Well, I'd say can Darwin crochet? That's the big question right now. No is the answer.
But look what he was going up against. He was going up against people who have calculated the world to be 6,000 years old, and he had to go against that. And those people were pretty sure of that. And I know this, not because of my research, but because he's an Irish dude who's in Armagh, he's an archbishop, and he counted all the baguettes in the Bible, and he went, the world is 4004 BC, and that's when it happened. October 23rd, this is when it happened.
Sorry, he counted all the baguettes?
Yes.
What, the French Bible?
Yeah, he knew Jane was going to be dressed as a French person on the show, and he went, ooh la la.
I thought I misheard that. It's like, I went to a church store as well. I'm pretty sure there was no like French bread in there.
We had a constant bun.
I literally just got it. I think he chose baguette.
Oh,
Yeah.
fuck.
Yeah.
I genuinely thought you said baguette.
I thought he said it as well. So he counted the generations.
Yes, Neil, I promise I wasn't being inappropriate. I genuinely thought there was French sticks in the Bible and you counted
Yes,
them.
yes. People don't know that
When they talk
Jesus
about the
fed
5
everybody.
loaves.
Yes, 5 loaves, 2 fishes, and they were all baguettes. Yes, that's what happened in the Bible.
Oh my god, that's so funny.
So he counted all those backwards, and he figured out this, and that's what Charles Darwin was going up against.
Let me give you a thought experiment then, Angela Barnes and Jake. If I was to say to you, you discover something so brilliant, a way of doing a comic monologue that will change the face of stand-up, but kill every other stand-up endeavour in its wake.
done, straight
yeah.
in.
Yeah.
You would public, you'd end everyone else, you would become a pariah carry, and but you'd still go forward with it, because that's the position you found him in. The dogma of the day that everyone went with was the church, and he came up with the new version.
Let's remember the church is still there saying this shit, so he didn't kill it off, did he?
No.
And some people you go to dinner with. I had a woman. I was in the middle of a dinner with a load of people, and one of the wives of the people we were there just all of a sudden just said, "Oh, I don't believe in evolution," and the entire table just went silent, and no one knew what to say. Obviously, old Muggins here asked some more questions. I was like, "Oh, what do you believe in?" She was like, "Well, I believe in God, and I believe in creationism," and then basically ended the conversation. She got a bit upset. We went out for a cigarette, and I went, "Babes, tell me what you believe in," and asked her questions about it. But it's not a great party piece.
Let's sum up what Charles Darwin said. The evolution and natural selection is organisms best suited to their environment are the ones that survive. They pass on the characteristics to their offspring. Over time, a species not only changes because of these qualities, sometimes an entirely new species emerges. This is why organisms vary. The variations better suit individuals to their environment, boosting their chances of passing down these traits. Now, I've got to throw this in here. I know we're in a genius envelope here, but the image, I tried to watch some of the films dramatisations of Darwin. If you ask people about Darwin, people with no experience, it's of a gentleman naturalist, started as a shipmate aboard the Beagle, was entranced by finches, wandered silently through his garden, and came out with this genius revelation at 50. Newsflash, that is bollocks. Let's for a second focus on who his granddad was, Erasmus Darwin, who wrote a book called Zoonomia, which very broadly, in the toddler version, laid out the building blocks of how species change. This was discussed around him from the moment he was born, vigorously, aggressively, and in an engaged fashion.
Oh my God!
He already had a lot of the stuff from. Take away the fact that Lyle, the geologist who he read, Alfred Russell with 1L, the only ever occurrence of the 1L Russell, ruined it all. Russell didn't have himself 1L Wallace. And these people were floating all around him saying natural selection and evolution. He was the one that put it all together. I put it to you, he's more of a curator, perhaps a genius curator. And also, let's not get in. Listen, I'm a hardcore scientist, no God in my heart, dead on the inside atheist. But there are jumps in the fossil evidence all over the place. The argument for the gradation in species is constantly called into question by the fact that now and again species appear to jump in a scientific way, not in a religious God way. It doesn't appear to be the whole story. My theory was wrong, and it wasn't his theory. I would suggest
that if we're discussing man's evolution from the planet like ancestor, a man who's written the book Son of a Silverback is not the best moderator for this particular discussion.
Let's look at Australopithecus. If you don't know what Australopithecus is, it's the nearest ape we can find to us. Centre of gravity at the pelvis, upright. Where are the apes? An ape in between would have died overnight, one where your chest is leaning forward with your face smashing into the ground. At some point, one ape stood up quite quickly if they wanted to freaking live. The argument for a species for a couple of 100,000 years with their chest forward slightly dragging itself around is, there's no evidence for it, and it defies logic.
Is it there's that moment of change? Is it Lucy they call her? Australopithecus Lucy or something?
Australopithecus.
Yeah,
Australopithecus.
Right.
But going back to what you were asking, like the even if his theory, you know, could be disproved in places and wasn't necessarily completely robust, at least he started the conversation, right? He started or made it cohesive and made it, you know, in a. All right, he might have been a bit of a plagiarist stroke curator, but he isn't one of those things. Who isn't? Like we're all using stuff that we've learned in our lives to put together and put it in a different way, right?
This idea that sometimes we have somebody who invents something nonsense. All science is based on the shoulders of giants, so scope what went on before.
Every single artist in the world, anyone who's created something, it's not a unique experience. They have generated all of that stuff from all of their experiences. It's like Kylie Jenner saying that she's a self-made billionaire. Babe, she started with $1 million, you know?
Yeah.
And also, it's
self-made 999 million.
Yeah.
But you knew all the other attacks that had been on all those other people. He knew they were going to happen to him when he published study. He spent 20 years guessing theory, but also going, the last bit is, this is my evidence, the last bit is, this is my evidence.
Okay, Angela, sorry.
I was just going to say, in 2014 I did an Edinburgh show about my dead dad. Now Russell had already cornered that market, but it didn't stop me doing it, because I still had a dad that was dead,
We've all done a dead relative show.
But the twist, that was all the same dad was amazing.
I know. That's what I was ready for when I walked on the end of Angela's show. I went, what do you mean, my dad? And they
if you were doing that now, would you have Kim-Pedersen staff walking out as a hologram?
As a hologram.
That would be amazing.
So to this day, the theory of evolution by natural selection is accepted by the scientific as the best evidence-based explanation for the diversity and the complexity of life on Earth. I totally agree with what you're saying here, Jade and Angela, that we all stand on the shoulder of giants, no scientific discovery, blah blah blah. But over and over again, Darwin has been presented.
All our operators are on call right now. Please try later.
As my theory, my work, the pronoun erupts all over the pages way more than it needs to. This is a man that's insecure about the provenance of his ideas. And what does that tell you? It tells you that Erasmus Darwin, his own freaking granddad, word as original into his ear when he was 2.
Was it that though, or was it that he was aware that
all
there
our operators
were
are on call
issues with it? So I don't know. Is it okay for me now to bring up the peacock thing? That's what I've been writing about in my book. If you're not,
No, peacock's great.
Because he said, didn't he, that something like the sight of after he'd written, it's all been out there, and in a letter to someone, he wrote that the sight of a peacock makes him sick, right? And not just because they're cocky show-offs, but because he couldn't explain with his original theory why the peacock had those feathers, because they would have been costly to the peacock, right? They would have harmed his chances of survival rather than enhanced them. So he had to write a new theory, which he didn't, like when he wrote The Descent of Man.
All right, we better go on to envelope number 2, because all we've done there is admire the genius of the man, and I've flung a bit of manure at that tower, that edifice. But envelope 2 is going to do a lot more than that.
I have it there, I think. It remains fair to say that Darwin was a direct and disastrous influence not only on Hitler, but on the whole mid-20th century political mindset.
True.
Now, this comes from A.N. Wilson's biography, which if you really want to read an up-to-date, brilliant re-evaluation of Darwin, read it. I thought I'd skip read it. I didn't skip read it. I got lost in it. Brilliant. There's an idea called eugenics, that we should all improve the human species by selectively mating people with specific desirable hereditary traits. Now, very often, like when we talk about Karl Marx, like how responsible can Karl Marx be for Lenin and all of that? I mean, there's no way he could have known his field, because let's share the oats around would have led to that. You could even argue that Einstein, when he worked out to crack the atom, probably didn't realise it was going to be used for such horrific things as he was working out his formula. There is no way, having read everything, I can be convinced that Darwin did not know exactly what he was saying and what he was doing when he was talking about survival of the fittest.
At that time, I think eugenics was common amongst biologists, right? That was a common way. We have to contextualise it slightly, I think, that we now know eugenics as an idea bad, really, really bad. Because his theories at that point were able to perpetuate that, I don't think he can necessarily be blamed for the way that was then interpreted.
Darwin had a beloved friend called Ernst Haeckel. If you've not heard of Ernst Haeckel,
you should shout at the back of Comedy Club.
He did. He felt absolutely bastard. Get off stage, you're not the right race. No.
Tell us a theory.
This was not just a friend. This was a loving pen pal where they used the friendly tenses of German when they wrote to each other. These were buddies who encouraged each other. Stephen Gould wrote, Haeckel's evolutionary racism, his call to the German people for racial purity and unflinching devotion to a just state, his belief that harsh, inexorable laws of evolution rule